Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about my tier list of the best leaders in Twilight of the Republic. So, I'm sorry this video is coming a little bit late to the party compared to other YouTubers' video. The reason for this is because my video was actually ready and then the Boba ban happened, so that obviously threw a lot of my tier list away, because obviously banning such a very big part of the meta completely changed the landscape and does completely redistribute the way certain leaders are playable in the competitive meta. I also have more knowledge of the Twilight of the Republic that I had a couple of weeks ago, which obviously is going to make my video so much more informative for you guys. So yeah, it's coming a bit late, but hopefully it is more informative. If you like that kind of video, please like and subscribe to the channels. It really helps a lot. Thank you so much for supporting Thork Hot Takes. So as you can see on the screen, I laid out very precisely what I mean by different tiers. So S tier means meta defining, the leader to beat and the leader to play around. In A tier we got leaders that are part of the meta and generally powerful leaders that can be played in a wide amount of archetypes but are not like necessarily super as strong as the one in S tier. So therefore they're maybe not as targeted by the meta, but they're still very much part of the meta, and the reason why there's a good reason to play those A tier leaders over the S tier leaders is because the S tier leaders are going to be directly targeted while the A tier might not. Then in B tier we got leaders that are a bit more situational, but they are very powerful if they are played in the right environment. And then C tier we got leaders that can be good, but they're missing something to put them at the top level. And then finally the D tier, the not competitively viable, the playing them will systematically put you at a disadvantage. Or there's not, also D tier is any leader that is not, also could be not bad, but there's just strictly better options out there. That's another way you can end up in the D tier area. So before we jump into rating the leaders in Twilight of the Republic, I'm going to show you what does my tier list for the different leaders that we have so far looks like. So we'll jump into this. Yep. So as you can see, on my tier list, obviously I do not rate Boba Fett anymore. Boba Fett used to be lonely on the S tier because I thought it was really one edge over everything else. To be honest, to be completely accurate, I could have probably created a new tier just for Boba and then leave a bunch of leaders in S tier. I decided to do it, put the Boba in S tier and then put the other A tier, but that's a different story. Now, obviously, now that Boba is banned, we have, I think, the meta-defining leaders, in my opinion, for from the previous sets is going to be Sabine, Han, the two Hans, and Bossk. I think even though Bossk might not immediately shine because it's hard to play hard control early on in the meta, I still think he's going to shine more as the meta develops and in the environment becomes a little bit more favorable for hard control, in terms of like, it's hard to play hard control very early on in the meta because hard control is by definition a very reactive archetypes. So obviously Bossk is also good in a variety of different settings. I still think that Bossk mid-range is very strong. So that's it's basically a Vader but much more capable of dealing with aggro and all that stuff. That's just very good. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just to give you an idea on where I'm standing at the moment on the previous leaders. On HL, you will realize that Krennic has gone up quite a bit. I think Krennic got some pretty significant boost in this expansion, notably the War Guard Attaché, which is like a Battlefield Marine. That's just a huge boost for Krennic. It just boosts his early game by a lot. We also have Cat Bane, which I think is a lot better in set 2 because of the Boba ban. I also think that Luke Skywalker is also a lot better. I think that the reason why Luke Skywalker did not see any play in set 2 is because clearly the red, white, blue shell was the best shell. And in that shell, I think Rey and Han are much better. However, if you're going for the green shell, I think Luke has a big argument in his favor, and the big argument is Dispatcher. Being able to go turn 1 Dispatcher, shield the Dispatcher is a very big deal. And one of the reasons why this deck didn't see any play in set 2 is because it was just so weak to Boba. But I think that with Boba out of the way, I think Luke is definitely going to be a much more playable leader. We'll see how that shakes out for him. Other than this, we got in the B tier, we got basically a bunch of leaders that I think are quite good, but they're a bit more situational. Then we got Grand Admiral Thrawn, which I think is definitely is getting a lot stronger in the new set. I think the synergy with Foresight is very, very strong, and now that there's no competition to play mid-range Thrawn compared to Boba, is also making the leader a lot more attractive. In City, we got a bunch of leaders which I think are not bad, but they're just like missing a little something to really put themselves out of the top. But you can definitely make a competitive deck with those leaders. It's just gonna be maybe not as good as the previous leader. Gar Saxon has shown some really, really good qualities here in the last set. We'll see if it's able to repeat its performance in the new set. One of the advantages Gar Saxon had, apparently, I mean, I haven't played with the deck to be fair, is that it was actually quite good against Boba. I don't know if that's now that Boba is out, I don't know if Gar Saxon is going to be the way to go. We'll see about that. And then on the D tier, we got leaders that are just not good. I know there's been a lot of debate about Afra. My opinion about Afra has not changed. If you're going for Afra hard control, you're much better off going. You're much better off going like for an Aiden Yellow. You just will get better with Aiden Yellow. Even a Cat Bane Blue or even a Grand Throne Blue will probably outperform Afra, in my opinion, as hard control archetypes. And I've explained, I did an entire article explaining this. Definitely she's more playable than now that Boba is out of the way, because Boba was clearly the best leader for hard control yellow based deck. But I still think she is inferior to other options out there, and that's why it's in D tier. Anyway, so that's currently my list. So now without further ado, let's get into my my tier list for the set 2. So we're gonna build this together. We're gonna build this together. No, give me a second. Sorry. Oops. There you go. So we're gonna start by the beginning here with Ahsoka. So Ahsoka is pretty bad. I mean, getting the coordinate whenever your leader is out is not that difficult, which means that she's often gonna be a 5/6. The problem is, so by the way, I don't use the F tier, so we're just gonna delete that. Yep. It's just that 5/6 is basically kind of like the problem with Ahsoka is that our leader's ability is very bad. As a 5/6, it's kind of fine. It's kind of fine to be 5/6 for 5, but you still have need coordinate to turn this on, and more importantly, the competition in the red-white area is just too competitive. There's just too many strong leaders in those colors. She doesn't stand a chance as far as the competition goes, so she's simply not very good. There's simply just too much competition in that area, and she's not good enough, especially on her leader's ability. Then we got Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker, I rated it number 3 of my best leader in the set in my Olympic Games video thing. I think he's better than that. I think he's better than he outperformed whenever I play him in Constructed. I think that his leader ability is very, very strong, allows you to get really ahead in the game early on in the game, and trading for a few damage is really not that big of a deal. As he deploys, he's an absolute monster of a leader with extremely big stats, and he has very relevant traits. He's in one of the strongest color combination. Being in red-white is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you get access to some of the best cards in the game. But it also means that you are competing with Sabine and you're competing with Han, so that's really going to be like kind of the Achilles heels of Anakin, is just the competition that he has in this color combination. With all that being said, I think he's a very solid leader, and more importantly, it's a leader that can be played in a wide variety of archetypes. You can play Anakin Yellow with the Anakin Yellow. You can play Anakin Double Red mid-range. You can play Anakin Blue, and you can play Anakin Green. And obviously, every time it's going to be sort of a mid-range deck. I don't think there's any reason to be playing an Anakin Green. And I think in a very aggro meta that we're gonna have, I think Anakin can really be very powerful because not only do you get a leader that gets stronger as you get hit more, that can really race the opponent and kill him very quickly, you also get of our mid-range archetypes are naturally pretty strong against aggro. So I think that Anakin is going to be very well positioned in current meta. I'm going to put it in 8 here. Next we got Asajj Ventress. So Asajj Ventress was already a leader that I considered to be playable in the previous meta. But now that that Boba is banned, she's definitely in the conversation here for a very strong aggro leader. Once again, so she has a very powerful asset in terms of like her leader ability is very easy to use. She deploys very early on, and she has this pseudo like shoot first effect that allows you to get yourself pretty far ahead early on in the game. And here's an early force unit which is very strong. Whenever you combine this with like you can basically put her out and then put like a fallen lightsaber on her, and then she becomes, and then you compensate. One of the major weaknesses of her is that she is quite easy to kill with only 4 health, which is kind of our biggest issue. So right now, as far as I've tested, I would definitely put Asajj on the B tier. Next we got Captain Rex. Captain Rex as a leader is actually pretty good. Like he comes out at relatively early on, it's 2-6 tight line, and then put a 2-3 out as he comes out, as he can place. That's a lot of stats you get for your box, and if your opponent has a removal against Rex, he still is left with a 2-2 behind this, which is pretty decent. The Captain Rex has 2 major issues. The first issue is that green-white, the green-white coordinate archetypes has not been pushed enough in Twilight of the Republic. Really, there's just simply not enough support for this archetype to really work. And the cards that we've been given are just simply not good enough. The second problem with Captain Rex is his leader's ability, which is very bad, costs a ton of resources, requires for a unit to have attack this turn, and the effect is you get a 2-2, which is nice, but I think it's just overpriced. So I think Captain Rex is, yeah, he's really missing something to be good. I'm going to put this in C tier. Count Dooku. Count Dooku has one of the strongest leader ability in the entire game. The only problem is that he's restricted to only work with separatists, and Count Dooku does not do very well with separatist unit that already have exploit, because adding an additional exploit to a unit that already has exploit natively is not really that good most of the time. What is very powerful is to give exploit to units that are not supposed to have exploits. You need like Kalani, Kraken, Count Dooku, that kind of thing. This is where Count Dooku really becomes powerful. So in my opinion, so that's really what the real first issue with Count Dooku is, how restricted he is in terms of what he can possibly play. The second inconvenience of Count Dooku is how late he deploys. And I think for this leader, it's a very big deal, because this leader is not really a ramp, slow playstyle, as opposed to what you might actually think whenever you see him for the first time. He's actually much stronger as a sort of like a mid-range leader that can really get those super strong power spikes. And the problem is like he gets those very high power spike, but then he doesn't have the leader deploy that allows him to really take advantage of those power spike. So for example, if you're playing, let's say, like a Count Dooku on turn 3 to kill something and put a big unit on the play, this would be some on turn 4. That would be on turn 4. Yeah. Instead of 5. Yeah, on turn 4. It would be so much more powerful if at the same time that you do this big play, you would be able to deploy your leader at the same turn. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Count Dooku is just very expensive, and that's, I think, a big detriment. He has insane stats, but I think he would benefit from being cheaper and having lower stats. So those are like the 2 main weaknesses of Dooku. But with that being said, Count Dooku, once he's deployed, he's a monster. 5-9 is just very high stat line with Overwhelm as well. And he has one of the strongest leaders ability in the game. So obviously he's competitive. He's just more niche than I thought he was. So I'm going to put this in B tier. Then we got General Grievous. So General Grievous does benefit a lot from the Boba ban, as he's a cunning villainy leader. But I just don't like him very much. I think the leader's ability to give your droid sentinels, I think, is very situational, and also force you to be playing a lot of droids in your deck, which is not necessarily... Droids are not the best card, in my opinion. They are fine, but they are not amazing. As he deploys, he has pretty good stats, but he deploys on 6, and I think that when you deploy on 6, it's a significant disadvantage. I don't see any reason to be playing Grievous over the other leaders. He's not terrible, but I don't think he does anything particularly well. For me, it is a D tier. Moving on to Jango Fett. So Jango Fett, I would have put that leader probably in C tier before the Boba ban, but the Boba ban changes everything, because obviously now Jango has the monopoly on the Boba cards, which is obviously Fire Spray, and Fire Spray being one of the best cards in the game. Jango Fett has everything. He has pretty decent stats, a 3-7 for 5. Now that Boba is gone, we can finally say it. 3-7 for 5 is a perfectly acceptable stat line. If you're 4-6 for 5 or you're 3-7 for 5, it's as good as it gets. There's nothing better in the game in terms of stats that you get for the price. So that's one first great thing for Jango. Second great thing for Jango is obviously his ability, which I think is very good if you play this in a red shell. There's just simply a lot of so if you play this in the yellow shell, there's simply just a lot of good yellow black cards, which combines very well with his ability. We're talking about ASB agents in my previous video. Also, of course, P38 Starfighter is excellent with Jango Fett. Obviously, there's now, if you're playing for the Ruthless Raider, you can also ping and deal some damage. So there's simply a lot of strong synergy with this card. If you're playing green, you can play it with Salacious Crumb. There's just simply a lot of great things going on that you can play that are just cards that you would play in those kind of decks anyway. So now that you have an ability that takes advantage of this, that's even better. So yeah, Jango Fett, I think specifically Jango Red is going to be an absolute menace. I've been playing this deck quite a bit, and it is, in my opinion, one of the strongest Algor deck in the game. It is not as good as Boba Red. Boba Red, definitely the ability for Boba to be able to untap resources to play multiple threat a turn is definitely more powerful than the ability to exhaust enemy units, which is only useful in some specific situation, even though it is very strong. I still think that Boba's ability is stronger, and I also believe that Boba as a 4-7 stat line is also a significant reason to be Boba. So I think Boba Red is better than Jango Fett, but Jango Fett is not far behind. I don't think Jango Yellow or Jango Green, then if you're playing those archetypes, you're losing a lot compared to the Boba, the original Boba, especially since you can't even wear Boba Fett's armor. However, in Boba Red, Jango Red is very, very close in power level than the original Boba Red. You can even argue it's arguably stronger because it got benefit from, it can actually play P38. So obviously Jango Red not as good as Boba Red would be in set 3, but Jango Red in set 3 might actually be as good as Boba Red in set 2, which is very scary because, as you know, this is a very, very strong deck. So in my opinion, Jango Red is one of the deck to beat in the set. In my opinion, Jango is the best leader in set 3. Obviously, that was not in one of my original video, but once again, that's because Boba Ban. If Boba Ban was not there, there would be no reason to believe Jango. Just a knockoff version of Boba is still an absolute menace. It's obviously a lot more specialized. You're gonna have to play him in a much more in a deck that much more play around Jango Fett as opposed to Boba, which could be playing almost anywhere, and it doesn't have as many strong play around card like Boba Fett's armor. So it's not on the level of Boba Fett. Of course, no, it doesn't even have the same stats. A 3-7 is not as good as 4-7. So it is not as good as Boba, but it is still very, very close. Especially if you talk about Jango Red. Jango Red is very close in power level of Boba Red. So you guys wanted a nerf version of Boba. That's exactly what Jango is. So so in my opinion, it's gonna be Jango Fett is gonna be one of the Jango Red is gonna be one of the deck to beat, and is a very, very powerful deck. So in my opinion, it is deserving of S tier spot, and is in my opinion the best leader in the set. Strong stats, strong ability, and strong play around card with Fire Spray, and all for the 3 reasons that Jango Fett deserve to be in the S tier. Then we got Mace Windu. So Mace Windu is interesting. Kind of wanted to be like kind of this control leader for heroism. The problem is like heroism is still missing 2 very important things to be a real control color, in my opinion, is the fact that he's missing kind of wrath effect, like what's it called, like yeah, wrath effect or board wipes, like super laser blast. I mean, yes, you have invasion of kurtosis, but invasion of kurtosis suggests that you're playing a lot of units, which obviously a Mace Windu deck probably doesn't. Mace Windu is really supposed to be this kind of like play a lot of card that deals damage, things like open fire, like daring raid, and to really take advantage of Mace Windu's ability, because when you do, Mace Windu is actually quite strong. Turning your daring raid into a 2 damage deal 3 is very powerful. Then you can go like open fire and then deal 1 Mace Windu, then you have 5 damage deal 6. So basically you turn your open fire into a deal 4 damage deal 6. I think that's very powerful. Then his when deployed ability is also pretty strong whenever you combine it with obviously AoE red effects and stuff like this. And obviously you got a very decent stat. So it's very similar to kind of like Vader in terms of like what he does. It just needs a little bit more support in my opinion. And more importantly, we need like real hard remove, like board wipes in white or equivalent of board wipes, so stuff that allows you. So unlimited power, unfortunately, is not that. Unlimited power is not very good. Unfortunately, it's not as good as I was hoping for. So double red, white as a control archetype is still missing something, but he's not an unplayable leader. I think it's a leader that you want to keep an eye on, in my opinion. Then we got Darth Maul. So Darth Maul is another leader which is interesting. So it goes to 6/6 or 6/4 with Overwhelm, some interesting synergy with the new Darth Maul. You can give him Overwhelm and then use his use ECL, ambush 2 units and deal a ton of damage and Overwhelm. That kind of thing. We see a lot of people kind of playing around Maul and trying to build around Maul. I'm personally not a massive fan of the guy. I think he's the deployment on 6 is I think the problem with Maul is kind of he has an identity issue. I mean, Mace Windu might not be the best leader in the game, but at least it's very clear what he wants to do. It's the same with Captain Rex. One of the problem with Maul is like it's kind of want to be an aggro archetype because it gives overwhelm to everything, but then overwhelm is kind of, yeah, you have to attack units, so it's kind of a mid-range, so it suffers from an identity crisis. And I think that when a leader doesn't have a clear game plan or identity, like for example Anakin, he needs to be very strong to make up for that. And I think Anakin is strong enough, is so strong, and deployment is so his ability is so good that he really makes up for his lack of identity, if that makes sense. While Maul is not powerful enough, so it makes up for that identity. In my opinion, Maul is D tier. I know that a lot of people are gonna be upset about this, but yeah, I'm just simply not a big fan of the leader. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's unplayable though. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna put it on low C tier, guys. I'm gonna be nice, and I'm gonna put it on low C tier. But yeah, it's yeah. A 6/6 star line can be strong, but yeah, I just don't see it. I'm gonna put it in low C tier, but honestly, it's really in between the two. Then we got Not Gunray. So Not Gunray is pretty good in limited, but I think in constructed he's just simply too slow. So he's kind of like the other side of the coin of the exploit. So Dooku is about exploiting units that don't have exploit, while really Not Gunray is about exploiting units that do have exploits and get some droids, so you always kind of have some droids on the board. The problem with Not Gunray is that he's really easy to play around. Your opponent can very easily just kill 1 or 2 droids, kill droid in such a way that you can't really use your ability. His deployment comes at 6, which is very late. Stat line is horrible. A 2/8 doesn't really have any impact on the game. Exploit cards can be powerful, but they're also very easy to counter. Opponent plays a removal on your big exploit unit. You have your eyes to cry because it's just so hard to recover from. I don't think this is... I think playing exploit in this way does not work in constructed. I think the best way to use exploit in constructed is simply to try to cheat those units and play faster. Units that are already kind of decent for their regular price, but can be exploited for it to be even cheaper. That's what Count Dooku does. But those big exploit units are simply just not good in constructed. The only kind of big exploit card that sees a little bit of constructed play is Malevolence, and even Malevolence, in my opinion, is a bit overrated if you ask me. So yeah, so it's going to be going to D tier. I'm going to put this between Grievous and Ahsoka. Then we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Obi-Wan Kenobi really, I was very disappointed. I thought that so basically what we needed for Obi-Wan Kenobi was some sort of payoff for healing units. So a card I would say something like, whenever you heal units, deal damage to something. Whenever you heal units, like heal that much HP to your base, like something like that, something that would really reward you for healing your units, because healing your units is kind of situational. You need to have a unit that is damaged, and then you need to use an action to use Obi-Wan to heal your units. All of this is kind of like stuff that don't really happen in Constructed. I understand that the leader is a lot better in limited play, but in Constructed it simply just doesn't happen very often. The leader deployment though is very good. 4/7 Sentinel is really, really nice, but unfortunately that's not quite enough. And at least it's a Sentinel that you know cannot be waylaid, cannot be bounced by cunning and all that stuff. It cannot be killed by Fell the Dragon or by takedown. Like it's a very solid leader deployment, even Constructed. But I think that unfortunately the leader's ability is just completely bad, and there's just better options in that color combination. We talked about Luke earlier. We talked about Rey. The competition in this color combo is quite tough. So unfortunately, Obi-Wan is not going to see play. I can see this leader becoming better as they once again print some real payoff for healing units, but at the moment, Obi-Wan Kenobi is not playable in Constructed, which is a huge disappointment because he's such an iconic character. Already Obi-Wan Kenobi did not get a unit in this set, which I think is ludicrous in my opinion. And the fact that the leader himself is not really good in Constructed, that's a nail in the coffin for poor Obi-Wan, which really has been treated very poorly by this set for such an iconic character. Talking about characters that have been treated poorly by this expansion, we have Padme Amidala, which she does have a unit, but our unit is honestly not really good. And the leader, unfortunately, is also not very good. It turns out that, once again, I need Coordinate to turn on our ability, need to be playing a lot of Republic units in your deck to be able to really benefit from our ability as well. Republic units just are not making an entire deck build of Republic is just not that strong. The Republic cards in general are relatively weak. And that's basically it. That's the problem. So she has 2/7 Restore 1 is basically a worse version of Krennic, where Krennic, if you remember, is 2/7 with Restore 2 and with a more useful ability. And also white green is a very bad color combination. She's bad even in draft. I think she's bad, to be fair. So yeah, that's unfortunate for Padme, another very iconic character who got treated very poorly by this expansion. Then we got Pre Vizsla. So Pre Vizsla, I like it quite a bit. There's a couple of things that I like about it. First of all, he has very good stats. 5, 4, 6. Most likely he's going to be Saboteur. So 4, 6, 4, 5 Saboteur is pretty nice. And having like a bunch of cards in hand is actually not that difficult if you build your deck around it. Obviously, drawing a bunch of cards is not necessarily what you want to do in this game, but it can kind of be nice. So it's a very strong hero deployment. Unfortunately, what I found out is like his leader's ability is just not that good. Just too situational. Pay 1, you need to have been drawn some cards on top of the card you drew this turn, and then you get to pay 1 and deal 1 damage to something. I think it's just a bit too situational. Maybe it would have been better if the ability did count the card that you're drawing from your turn, so you would always deal at a minimum of 2 damage, but maybe it would be costing 2 then. So 2 resource deal 2 by default, and then becomes stronger if you're drawing more than 2 cards during a turn. But the fact that you have to draw some extra cards, to use the ability, makes it tremendously situational. Another cool thing about it though is like he's a trooper, which is kind of nice. There's a lot of trooper synergies in set 2, and he's kind of aggressive, so you can play this in an aggro trooper deck and do some decent stuff, but it's really missing something to be good. I'm going to put this at the bottom of C tier. Then we have Quinlan Vast. So I was very excited for Quinlan at the beginning, and then I started playtesting, and I just found out that the ability was not as good as I thought it was, even though it is pretty decent, and it is it deploys early, has very good, so 3/7 for 5 is really good stats. Once Quinlan is deployed though, ability becomes a lot stronger. Obviously there's the combination with Tarkin Town. We see Quinlan, Tarkin Town all over the place. I think it's a decent deck. I don't think it's quite like gonna be like the best deck in the game, but I think it's definitely gonna be a meta deck. So my opinion is Quinlan, I put it in B tier, and I put it over Asajj. Strong leader's abilities, strong stats, force unit that deploys on 5, so 4 synergies. The red color is perfect for Quinlan because you get Tarkin Town to come out with the ability, and you get access to obviously 4 throw. So Quinlan is just really solid. I prefer Anakin though. As far as the mid-range leader force based on red, I personally prefer Anakin, but they're different leaders. Anakin is a bit more It doesn't have access to Tarkin Town, so they both have their advantage and inconvenience. I don't know if Anakin Quinlan is Quinlan Red. I don't know which one is better between Anakin Yellow and Quinlan Red. Both decks have their advantages and their inconvenience. Sorry, between Quinlan Tarkin Town and Anakin Yellow. However, the reason why I would rate Anakin higher is because Anakin can be played in a wide variety of different color combinations, whereas Quinlan is really attached to that red color. Next, we got Wat Tambor. A lot of people were very excited about this card, but I honestly don't see it. 3/6 for 5 is not great. The leader's ability can be powerful, but the problem is like it's kind of like you need to have one of your unit dying and then give a +2/+2 unit. So that means you need to have 2 units ready to be able to make use of the ability. So it's like very difficult, very awkward to use. Maybe I haven't played against a guy who knows what he's doing and really play the right version of this deck. So maybe I'm still need to have a little bit more experience on playing against it. But so far, I'm not impressed by this card at all. The stats are weak. The ability is weak. Also, green black is not a good color combination if you want to play aggro. Green black, sorry, is this color combination screams wants you to be playing mid range or control with a ramp and the overwhelming barrage. Yeah, wrong color combination, weak stats, and situational ability. I don't think it's a good leader. So gonna put it is in there. Then we got Yoda. So I rated Yoda the best leader of the set in my previous kind of Olympic Games video. And in Insight, I think it's a bit wrong. I think that as good as Yoda is, I think that he has a major inconvenience, and obviously the fact that he deploys on 7. And I think that to really take advantage of Yoda, you really have to play him, kind of have to play it in red. I mean, maybe you don't, but like, the thing is like deploying on 7 for a villainy leader is kind of okay because you have a lot of ramp. But for a heroism leader, it's more difficult because you only have 1 ramp, which is resupply, and then there's Spark of Hope, but that's a lot more situational. So personally, I don't like expansive heroism leader. With that being said, and the thing is like the leader's ability is nice, but it doesn't have an impact on the board unless you're playing it with You're My Only Hope. So it's an ability that can be very strong, but sometimes can just feel like a little bit meh. With all that being said, obviously combination with You're My Only Hope is great. He's definitely one of the strongest leader flip in the game. Flips out, kills something, then you can play like you can basically like the turn of Yoda and Luke on the same turn is absolutely backbreaking. So I think Yoda is going to be a strong leader, but I think in the current meta is just too aggro for him. I don't think Yoda can survive in a meta where the best deck in the sets is Django and Sabine. I think it just deploys too late for that. So in my opinion, I like Yoda very much, but I'm gonna put him in B tier. I think he's strong, but I just think he's just not very well positioned in the current meta because he's a bit too slow, just deploys too late. But I still think he's a very strong leader. So I would say definitely this is my top 3 best leader in the set. Django Fett number 1, Anakin number 2, Yoda number 3. So previously I had a Django and a Palpatine. We'll talk about Palpatine later, but first we're going to talk about Nala Se. So Nala Se, I love same. Like lots of people were excited about this card. I think this card is so trash. Like okay, so and I explain why. So basically, the problem with Nala Se is that when you actually start building, you start realizing the problem with Nala Se the moment you start building with her. Basically, the only major advantage of Nala Se is like it allows you to be playing Wrecker. Like if you think about the best clones in the game, you're gonna have Wrecker and Tech, okay? That's basically, those are the best clones in the game. All the other clones, they are strong, but they're not strong to the point where you would want to play an underpowered leader that has no leader's ability, pretty much, to justify putting them in your deck. So basically, Wrecker, the main advantage of Nala Se is that you'd be playing Wrecker ECL, and then play Overwhelm Barrage in the same deck. That's it. That's pretty much the only reason to be playing Nala Se. Clone is nice, but I don't think it's good to the point where you would play Nala Se just to play a clone deck. To play Tech in it. That just doesn't make any sense. In any case, what's the problem with Nala Se? So to be blunt, the problem is that Nalase wants you to be playing Swarm, because the idea is you put a bunch of tokens in play, then you deploy Nalase, and then suddenly every time you deploy that, you get to heal too, which is pretty nice. That's very strong against aggro, for example. So first of all, first problem, that's really only a strong ability against aggro. It's not strong against other stuff. And then the problem is, like, most of the token generators, outside of Bad Patch, pretty much all the other token generators are not units. They are events, which mean that they actually do not benefit from Nalase's. You can't just play them in your Nalase deck. You can't. So that's a very big problem. I think I would have been a lot more excited about Nalase if she was in green, if she was like green-black, because then suddenly you can play the Wrecker and Overwhelming Barrage in the same deck, and then you can play a third color of your choice. It doesn't have to be blue, because blue is really the worst color for what Nalase is trying to do. And here you could be able to play double green, for example, and then suddenly you can play the card that allows you to generate 2 clone troopers for 2. You can play like Pyrrhus Assault. You can play like a lot of cool stuff that really combines well with Nalase. So overall, I think that she's in the wrong colors. Her ability is only truly useful against aggro. The main advantage of her stat line is she's hard to kill, meaning that the ability is going to be almost always there. But if the ability doesn't matter, or if you don't play a swarm clone deck, so you're not really able to generate enough clones for this to really matter, then suddenly the ability becomes completely worthless. So the leader is basically worthless. Like, it just, once again, this is just the only benefit you play Wrecker and Barrage. And once again, green-black is a color combination that wants you. Green-black, green-blue-black is a color combo that wants you to be playing super late game with a lot of powerful late game cards. We're talking about Vader, we're talking about Avenger, we're talking about Maul and all that stuff. And Wrecker is a horrible combination with that, because Wrecker destroys your own resources. So you can't even play, like, if you really want to play Wrecker, then you are kind of like, now I can't play all those late game cards because I'm destroying my own resources. So there's just so many counter synergies that don't work. The leader just doesn't work, at least with the current card pool. We're gonna need to see a lot more clones for this to ever be good. And honestly, I don't think we're ever gonna get there, because even in the clone dedicated deck, I don't know how powerful that is. So my opinion is one of the worst leaders in the set. I'm gonna put it over Padme, but she's really bad. Finally, we got Chancellor Palpatine, last but not least. So Chancellor Palpatine has been, obviously, as you can expect, the hardest leader to evaluate in the entire set. He's strong, but he's also quite clunky. There's also a lot of situations where, like, oh my god, I wish I would be on this side, I wish I would be on that side. You have to take play patterns that are non-optimal just to be able to flip him over. And you have to flip him over often, because if you're not, then you are effectively playing without a leader, because the leader deployed does not exist. So that's just a very, very painful. It's just very, very painful. I think that Chancellor Palpatine would be so much better if he was not cunning, because obviously it's a leader that doesn't deploy. So he's either going to be played in some sort of control deck based on blue, which is one of the deck lists I put it, which is by far the most common way to play Chancellor Palpatine, and or you're going to be playing in green, so some sort of value deck. He's not a aggro leader in any case. In both cases, cunning is not an asset. Like, cunning I think Chancellor Palpatine would be so much better if it was blue, or if it was any other color than yellow. Yellow is really the worst color for Palpatine, in my opinion. So, yeah, he's one of those leaders which is kind of an ability that doesn't work in synergies with cunning, which is really an aggro tempo colors, and Chancellor Palpatine is really the opposite of that, because he doesn't deploy. So it's kind of like, so I think that Palpatine blue has potential to be a strong deck, but maybe the meta is going to require to settle a little bit to know exactly how you want to build it. Once again, building hard control in an empty meta, in a meta that you don't know about, is kind of difficult. So in my opinion, Palpatine is good, but he's maybe going to need a little bit more time to shine, because we need to see how the meta is going to develop so he can build it properly. And obviously people are going to get better at kind of building with him and playing with him, because he's kind of a leader that requires a little bit of knowledge. So in my opinion, I'm going to put Chancellor Palpatine better than Dooku, but maybe under Asajj in the B tier. So it can be good, but you're going to need the right meta for him to come into play. So it's kind of a safe rating. And here it is. This is my tier list for tier 2. So for set 2, if I had to, once again, if Boba was not a thing, I would have put a Django would have just gone down into C tier. So yeah, definitely Boba Fett is going to be a strong leader. Anakin also going to be a presence in the meta. I would be surprised if he's not. And then those 5 leaders here, definitely competitively viable, but maybe needs a little bit more of a situation of a good meta to be able to shine. Those leaders here, they have potential, but I think they're not very good. They're just missing something. And then D tier for those unplayable leaders. And that's basically my tier list for set 2. Let me know in the comment below if you agree with my assessment. And once again, if you like that video, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time for another video.